Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the AHA movement. My name is Yogesh Kapoor. I am a communications coach. And today I have with me my co host, my friend, my accountability partner, Grace. So amazing. Grace, tell us something about yourself.
Hello, beautiful people. Okay, what I would quickly say is 3 years ago, I said that before this, but I'll say it again on this live. Facebook just reminded us that we had a live session exactly 3 years ago, and look at us. We are amazing. I'm happy to be here. I am Grace, so amazing. I am a physicist and a life coach. Over to you, Yogesh.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine how quickly time has
I
flown?
hope the internet will be nice to us today.
I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. It's interesting. Even I was reminded of the live that we did 3 years ago, and it's funny how time has flown, and we're still doing these lives right after 3 years, whether it's a different platform or another platform. But it's uh, it's a good thing that we're on it and on it, which brings me to today's topic is transformation through books. Okay, it looks like I lost Grace, but I'll keep going. Just like these lives, you can always go back and see our lives, even though they're like 2 years later, 3 years later, 10 years later, right? There's some YouTube videos you watch that are 10 years old or longer, and they're evergreen. You can keep watching and getting the knowledge out of them. Same way, it's books, right? Books is something that gives us transformation. And we all have certain books we like. There's certain books that we've read, and there's some famous books which almost a generation, not generation, generations have been reading. I mean, they've been reading for like been there since for 5 decades, 6 decades, and there, some. I remember some of the books that made me transform, but I'm gonna wait for Grace to come up over here. Now, growing up, we would read mostly storybooks and books in school, educational books and stuff. As kids, maybe storybooks transformed us, but in the more personal development world, there are books, like some interesting books that uh, definitely have made an impact, not just to me, but to many people out there. And I think one of those is The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. I think that was a very, very interesting book I read a long time back because it talks about the disciplines the person had. Hey, Grace, you're back. I lost you there for a bit.
Yeah, I'm back. Thank you. I hope it's not because of the weather. The weather is a bit funny. Sometimes we get that every time the weather is funny. But I'm here now. That's what's important. You were saying something.
Yeah, so I was talking to the audience right now about books and how, they've transformed lives, not just for like books that are recently written, but books that were there since 5, 6, 7 decades, even longer, right? And growing up in school, we would read storybooks or educational books, but in the personal development world, we read more of the more uh, books that transform us in some way or the other. And I just mentioned one book, which was The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, and how that book was all about discipline and so many other things, right? Whatever we got from it. But coming to you, Grace, name a book or two books or three books, whichever it is, right? Because we read a lot of books. Name some of them that have impacted you and transformed you, even if it was one lesson you got out of that book.
All right. So, I mean, I love reading. I love reading. So, this is a hard one for me to choose because every time I read a book, it leaves something super inside of me. But what's in the past 5 years, I can name five books that have really helped shaped my mindset about a lot of things. Number one is Think and Grow Rich. That book is super amazing. Number two is uh, The Science of Getting Rich. You can see it's all about wealth and all that. Then the third one that I read, I'm trying to remember the recent books that I read. I read Who Moved My Cheese. And then the fourth one I read, Who Moved My Cheese, and then the fourth one I read recently was the um the power of the subconscious mind. And then the fifth one is uh cannot remember right now, but I've read a lot of books. Can you hear me? I it seems like you're not speaking. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. I can. I lost you there, so I kept quiet.
Oh, nice. I just mentioned some of the books that I read, and I maybe because you didn't hear me, let me go over them again.
I
I think
I heard the first four. The last
okay.
one you were thinking about.
Yes, I mean I have them all bundled up because another good thing that I do is when I read a book, I take my time to let it sink and then look for practical examples. And you asked that what was it? Let me just look at Think and Grow Rich, what I learned from that particular book, Think and Grow Rich. The fifth one was Rich Dad Poor Dad. The fifth one doesn't last. Yeah. So Think and Grow Rich was a game changer for me. It changed my mindset in more ways than just in the area of financial success. The name will tell you Think and Grow Rich, and the only thing you think of is financial growth. But what it did to my belief system, what it did to all the things that I have that I grew up learning, some of the values that I've held, is something that I'm grateful to the author Napoleon Hill for exposing a lot of things in that book and reminding me of the power that I have got. So, if not for anything, the two lessons I got, particularly from that book, number one is never give up, never give up. And then, secondly, the power of persuasion, that whatever you're able to persuade with all, if you have the power to persuade, if you want something and then somebody is in front of that thing, you continue to persuade the person until the person be like, you know what, just take and leave me alone. I learned that lesson in that book. And then I also learned where he gave an illustration where somebody was digging. The person got to a point where he was supposed to get to gold, and the person gave up, and someone else that did not dig from where they started when it was difficult came, and voila, the gold was right in. So I mean, I loved Think and Grow Rich very well. So you tell me what you read recently or in the last 5 years, and you've been using for your work and for your personal growth.
Well, I'm not much of a reader, but when I do read, I read like you said, I read slowly. I don't read like consecutively a book every week or like how. But when I hear of a book, like one of the ones you mentioned, probably it's the most studied book because even one of my favorite speakers, Bob Proctor, he studied it for 50 years, was Think and Grow Rich. Um, I think there's a lot of gold in that book and the science of getting rich as well. In fact, there's a paragraph on science of getting rich where, I don't know, I don't remember the exact words, but it says there's a what's the right word? There's an essence that permeates everything, you know, and
Yeah.
it's such an important lesson. You realize that everything it's kind of just saying that everything is vibration, everything is frequency, everything is
Yeah.
all of that, that everything is God. That's what they're trying to say actually in that, right? And you catch yourself whenever you're in a bad vibration, that what are you sending out there? Like, are you sending out there, I need money? Are you sending out there that I
Mm.
need to sell this course because I need money? And that's the kind of vibration you're going to get back. And it's so interesting. um, that's just an example of one of the thing I remember. But the book that's made the major impact on me was called Dare to Fail. That was a very interesting book.
Mm.
It was written by someone from Malaysia. And in that, he gives examples of everybody who failed in life. Okay. He speaks about this lady who lost her children, lost her husband,
Wow.
got sick, and all of that, and how she rebuilt her life. That's just one example. And there's so many examples of people who tried and failed, in so many ways, and yet they had comebacks. They had different things they did in life. Somebody opened an organization, somebody started a charity, somebody did something else. So that book really taught me a lot. Like, no matter how many setbacks you have in life, you can always make a comeback. You know, you can always make a comeback, no matter what happens in your life. Recently, a book that has really interested me, because I was watching Bob Proctor, and they asked him, "What are your three favorite books?" And he was like, "Think and Grow Rich," "As a Man Thinketh." Okay, I haven't read that one, but I have to read that. And he said, "U Square." Okay, now I've never heard of that book. They say it's only a short, small book, 36 pages. Interestingly enough, there's this guy whose podcast I watch, and he had the author of U Squares, like he was
Wow.
interviewing him on the podcast. And that book, I haven't read it, but some of the paragraphs and what he was mentioning was gold, was literally gold on that book. And it's funny, that book was written 36 years ago. And I heard of it just now. And the funniest thing is, the author said it's selling even more now than it did 36 years ago. And back then, 36 years ago, he published it himself. He didn't go through a proper publisher. He published it himself, and
Wow.
in that podcast, it was so interesting. Some of the lines the podcast host was reading, the most important one that came out for me was that, when we think negative, it's not about more about thinking negative, it's more about the habit of thinking negative. Like, it's habitual thinking. And that hit me hard. Like, oh my God,
Mm.
I didn't realize that. Like, it's a small book, but there's so much gold in that book. And I'm gonna get that copy and read the whole book. I mean, that's one book I'm looking forward to read. Like I mentioned, Dare to Fail, Think and Grow Rich, Science of Getting Rich. This U Square is interesting. And just now, before our live, I just asked my sister to order um, the Indian Bible. It's called the Bhagavad Gita. And it's so interesting because the last time someone posted on a group that we have an English version, because I can't read Hindi. No, I can't read Hindi. I never grew up in India, so I can't read it. So they're like, there's an English version. And just now before our live, I messaged my sister because I'm like, I need that book. Get it for me. Send it across immediately. Because she's in the same city. So I'm like, get me the English version. Send it to me. I want to read this because I've heard a lot of people have read the book and they've got a lot of gold from that. So these are some of the books that in fact, remember Dr. Michael McKenzie,
Yeah.
right? I remember speaking to him about reading the Bible, reading the Quran, reading the Gita, because they're all religious books from all these, right? And seeing what's common about them.
Yeah.
And he advised me to read a book that shows what's common about all the religions, not what's different. But I never got my hands on that book, which I will ask him again too. But, it's interesting how you read something, and it can, even if it's one small thing that can give power to you, and you transform from there. You were mentioning the millionaire mindset earlier. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh my goodness. So because of work, it has become like a chore to read. So I sometimes in instead of not reading at all, instead of not investing in books by reading, I started investing in audiobooks. So in the place of not even reading at all, why not replace it with something that will still give you the same thing in that? So I invested in um, the 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 Millionaire Mindset by T. Harv Eker, and my goodness, even the beginning of the book, how he introduced it, he said, "I'm sure in your mind you're asking that who is this one that wants to come and tell me about the millionaire mindset." And he's even a millionaire and all of that and all of that. I mean, how he started the book would make you glued to it. Like, yeah, I like this person. This person is being vulnerable, and this person is almost telling you what an average person would think. An average person would be like, how can this person tell me 1 million ways to make blah blah blah? What does he have? What's this? What does he know to have the guts to even talk about this topic? So immediately I heard that, I knew he would be an author that I would really love to listen to. And it was a very long, it took me, I was usually when I go for my walks, I would put that my earpiece, and I would listen to the book. And I could go for 15 kilometers because it would be so interesting that I wouldn't want to stop. I'll just keep moving, I'll keep running, I'll keep moving, I'll keep running. And I'm like, wow, this book is so interesting. So that book was, I recommend it. If you can get your hands on it, I'd recommend it to anybody for the purpose of dealing with your blueprint, what you have, how you grew up thinking about money, your mindset about money, your mindset about not just money, about abundance, about greatness. The book is indeed a mindset book, a book that should be kept in your library, so that every time you are beginning to derail, you run back to it so that it can give you back momentum, right? So the Millionaire Mindset is one book that everyone should have, and I honestly recommend it. I really loved what T. Have Eker, talked about in that book. And honestly, I can listen to it again and again and again. Very interesting book, and I really would recommend it. But before I leave that part, I want to say something about, okay, so we've been talking a lot about books on success and everything. And then another book that I read was The Five Love Languages by um, Gary Chapman. Beautiful book. Beautiful book. You know, let me tell you one profound thing I learned from that book before I let you continue. I used to have this mirror effect. I used to be like, if you love me, I'll love you. If you don't love me, I won't love you. If you're nice to me, I'll be nice to you. If you're not nice to me, I won't be nice to you. But when I read that book, the book opened my eyes to understand that, look, if love is your nature, you'd continue to love regardless. You would continue to be who you are, and not necessarily be someone else because somebody else is not nice to you. That book is so profound that I would recommend it for couples. When you think you love someone and you're doing all you have in your arsenal, but this person doesn't look like they love you back, you would want to ask yourself, but I'm doing everything. That book will help you understand that, look, we're different and we have different ways that we would want to be loved. That book would open your eyes to understand how your partner wants to be loved, and it will help you also help your partner understand that this is how you want to be loved. And we are happy. So that's another book I'd recommend every time, every day, for couples to read and read and read and read, so that it can improve their love life. Yeah. Over to you.
I'm happy you mentioned that, I'm happy you mentioned that because there was a quote. I was in this course, Speaker to Trainer, back in 2021. And in that, the trainer said something. He said, nowadays, for generations, we followed certain things. And he said, but it's not always true. Like, that story of the tortoise and the rabbit, where it's like um, slow and steady wins the race. That doesn't exist anymore. Okay, slow and steady doesn't win the race anymore. Okay, you have to be fast, otherwise you get left behind, right? So the same way, there was a quote about, because you mentioned the love languages, right? Not necessarily the way we want to love someone. They want that kind of love, they expect something else. Somebody loves gifts, somebody doesn't, right? Like, I don't like gifts. Okay. Some people enjoy gifts, some people love compliments, some people love physical touch, right? It's different, the five languages. But he said something which comes down to something similar to the book. He said, we always say that treat people the way you want to be treated, correct? Treat people the way you want to be treated, right? But not everybody wants to be treated the way you want yourself to be treated. They want to be treated the way they want to be treated. So that was like, oh my God, that was a game changer in
Absolutely,
my
very
mind. I was like,
true.
oh, I didn't realize that, right? Because maybe I'm a person who likes people to talk softly to me, or people who explain things to me in an easy way. And if someone's giving me instructions, be very clear, right? But there's some people who are not like that. They want to be spoken to very loudly. They want to be given instructions in a very different way. They don't want so much explanation, right? So that, since you brought that book up, it made me think of that quote that I came up with. And I also do that. I don't have tolerance to sometimes read a lot, so I listen to the audiobook. In fact, I'm more audio person now than I am. Even when I sometimes go to sleep, I listen to, you know instead of writing affirmations, I listen to them.
Hmm.
So because I'm not much into reading and writing, I'm more into listening. So I listen to affirmations in the morning, or I prefer doing that than to, even for books. The Greatest Salesman, that's another book that I really like. It's short, it's sweet, and I remember 2 3 years ago when I was introduced to that book, I used to listen to that in my morning walks for 1 hour, and I would listen to all the 10 scrolls in that book, because it lasts about an hour as I did my morning walk. And back then it was COVID. We were sitting at home, or, we were stepping out. If we were stepping out, it was just within our community. So in the mornings, I usually had nothing to do. So I would listen to that audiobook. And that also made an impact on me, especially, some of the scrolls where he talks about having love, having love in the day for the people you're going to talk to and for everything around you. One of them is habits. The first scroll is about habits, how he says
Hmm.
that habits is everything, and we should focus on having good habits, not bad habits. you know
Yeah.
and how I just love the way that book is, because the way he's written it is exactly the way he wants us to learn. And it's so interesting. I mean, we can talk about so many of these books that are out there, but what would you advise to someone who doesn't read at all?
Okay, so what I've come to realize is anything you want to do and you want to do well, even if you don't like it, when you get people along, it gets easier. Join a book club. Join a book club where you guys get to meet maybe weekly, and once you join a book club, it gets easier. You're carried along, and you're forced, if not for anything, that you'd have to have a review, and for that reason you'd read. If reading is something that you want to do, that you want to introduce to your habit, and you find it very hard to do on your own, it is always advisable to get to get a support group. just join a book club. That's what I belong to, a book club that if not for anything, when I'm not able to catch up during the review, I'll be available and I would make sure I listen to the review of the book and I'll get the nuggets from that book. And then what I want to also quickly add before we go is, so, someone said something that in all the schools that he went to, the thing that helped him, the idea that made him a millionaire, was an idea he got from a book.
Nice. Nice. And I think that's for a lot of people, not just one. Elon Musk was interviewed about, because he started SpaceX, right? And
Yeah.
they asked him that, how did you learn about rockets? And he was like, I read the book. And that was so fascinating to hear that he didn't go to any university or college about, he read the actual books on how rockets work and how to make rockets and all of that. That is something that really made me think like, wow, if a human being is focused on what a book is teaching you, you could really take it and transform yourself, right? And sometimes you don't even need too many books. Like I said, Bob Proctor studied Think and Grow Rich for 50 years. Can you imagine? For 50 years, he studied the same book again and again. And there's always new wisdom and pearls that are coming out of it.
Yeah.
And I so totally agree with you on the part where you said get a book club, because just today afternoon, I started something here called English Corner, okay, where I go to my friend's coffee shop and we have a few people show up and we discuss a topic where they get to improve speaking English, while me and another friend who's a teacher, we come and we kind of host the whole thing. And one of the ideas I threw out today was that maybe we can also start taking out paragraphs from books. We don't have to read the whole book, but we read what the golden nuggets of the book are. And let us interpret what does it mean to everybody. So, and when you have a group, there's accountability, right? So everybody comes and
Yeah.
we have a group chat, we were throwing topics like, what topics do you want to discuss the following week? And one of the topic we came up with was relationships. But I love the whole, join a book club or something like that. It holds you accountable. And that goes for, so many things. And if you don't like reading, there's audiobooks. There's so many ways to actually learn. But it's important to study these books because you don't want to reinvent the wheel, right? Coming back to millionaire mindset, I remember one of the advices T. Harv Eker gave was go to a coffee shop and drink coffee once a week and feel rich, right? I remember that about that book. And that's something I do every week. I go sit down in a coffee shop, whether it's in a 5-star hotel or something, and I drink coffee, even if it's by myself, to give me that feeling of, yeah,
Rich.
So any last words before we end our live today, Grace?
Yeah, what I would just say is look at a book as someone giving you their experience. A book is a cheat code that if you're able to focus really to share in that in the author's experience, you're definitely going to get something that would help you on your journey. On this journey called life. So this week, be intentional about reading something new or listen to a book. In case you're not able to read, you can get the option of listening to it on audio, and then you'd appreciate what reading and the lessons that can be gotten from books. So that's where I'm going to end it. Just be intentional this week. That's what I would say.
Yeah, that's a good advice, Grace, right? I would say just add to it, take down notes. Sometimes when you write it down, it goes across your mind even more. But I think it's very important that you read books. whether it's audio, whether it's reading, right, to help you find that aha moment in a book that could transform a part of you, which has been in our case, right, in from the books we've read. So it's very important. And if you really want to develop yourself, guys, read books, whether it's audio, whether it's hardcover or soft cover, whatever. And if you don't like reading the book, get an ebook. Read it on your tablet or your laptop. People have different ways of learning, but it's important to take this wisdom and learn it. And other than that, if you watch the replay, please share this with someone. It might help someone who doesn't know about these books. Some of the books we mentioned is they've millions of copies have been sold and they've been read, and it could help anybody. Do follow and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we will be back next week with another topic in the AHA movement. What was your AHA? Please put it in the comments below, and we will see you again next Sunday, the same time. Thank you so much, Grace, for being here again, and see you next week. Bye-bye, everyone.
Yes. Bye.